everybody. Welcome to today's, I always say webcast, but it's not webcast. Welcome to my session during this awesome, crazy Hyperion Solutions Conference. I'm excited to talk with you guys today about, let me make sure I'm on my presenter mode, talk to you guys about freeform applications, otherwise known as Essbase and the cloud. interRel, we're awesome company. If you guys need any help, we'd love to help you. With that, we're jumping in. So have you ever wanted to build a planning application, but you didn't want to have the version dimension? You maybe didn't want to be constrained to having years and periods be in separate dimensions. Well, this is really kind of the introduction and the use case where freeform applications came from. There's also a great need where a lot of folks have a lot of on-premise Essbase applications, and they're trying to figure out how are we going to upgrade? Are we going to upgrade to Essbase 19c in the cloud? Are we going to, is there another cloud option for us to move our Essbase applications? And that's essentially what we're talking about today. Originally, this webcast was going to be on Thursday. So Edward and Glenn Schwartzberg are doing a presentation, and I can't remember exactly when this one is, but at some point during the conference, they're going to be kind of weighing the pros and cons of Essbase 19c versus freeform applications or Essbase and the EPM Cloud. So I'm really focusing just on freeform and kind of how you build cubes and how it all works. But definitely, if you're kind of looking for like, what are the pros and cons and considerations, do not miss Edward and Glenn Schwartzberg's session where they're going to kind of debate those two options. So, kind of the good old days, we used to have, our Hyperion implementations where we had Hyperion planning, and we had different applications that had some cubes. And then most customers were using full use Essbase, which meant we could build a lot of different reporting cubes in the Essbase environment as well. So we created reporting cubes, different types of analysis. So now when we go to the cloud, and I guess the other part that was good about those native Essbase cubes is we didn't really have any constraints around those cubes. We didn't have any rules about the dimensionality. With planning applications, if it was built within a planning application, we did have some rules. There were 7 standard dimensions that we had to have, and we couldn't change those. You had to have a dimension tagged accounts. You had to have an entity dimension, scenario, version, period, years, and currency, if you had enabled currency. Period and years were required to be separate dimensions. You had those separately, and you couldn't really change any of this. And again, it used kind of the combination of scenario, version, and entity to follow the approvals. However, when it comes to reporting cubes and different types of analytic cubes, we don't always want all of these dimensions. We don't always want to have to follow these rules. Our native Essbase cubes didn't have to. We didn't have any specific requirements that we could do. Dimensions could be named anything. We could really kind of, do anything we want. And it's interesting as we've gone through some of the evaluation for some of our customers that have been wanting to move their on-premise Essbase cubes into the cloud. We've been looking at some of those cubes, and some of you guys have done some pretty crazy things with them because Essbase is such a dynamic, scalable solution. So evaluating those and do we want to just move those into the cloud, we're actually seeing, well, there's maybe some opportunities for maybe some improvement in creativity and maybe a little bit of reining in some of the activities you guys have done with some of the native Essbase cubes. But the big takeaway, there's really no rules, there's no constraints with native Essbase cubes. So that's what we need. And is that option available in the cloud? And it is. So with the Oracle EPM Enterprise subscription, there is a component, just part of your subscription process, where you can build freeform Essbase cubes in the EPM Cloud. So you can have as many as you want. Now, again, I think a little bit is changing kind of with the pricing and the number of instances and applications you guys have, but essentially you're not limited, you're not constrained. You can have as many reporting cubes as you need to. So that's kind of the element that goes there. So how it works, freeform used to be called freeform planning. Really now it's just a freeform application. It's essentially Essbase in the cloud. We don't have any required dimensions. We can create a hybrid BSO cube. We can create an ASO cube. And then we can access it through the EPM Cloud framework, through SmartView and Excel. And it can support really large models. So we've done some testing with a couple of customer examples that have had, 1 million plus members, some really big data sets, and, it's performing great. So there are 3 ways to create cubes in Freeform. So one, you can migrate just an outline file. So you can pull over the outline file and move it in, and it's going to bring in all of the dimensionality. If you use this option, then you would still need to create subvars. You'd still need to kind of import in your calc scripts into Calc Manager rules, and you need to load your data. Another way, and this is kind of what I recommend for folks that are looking to migrate from an existing full use Essbase, native Essbase cube, is taking a snapshot from shared services and importing that into the application. And I've got some screenshots so you guys can see how this is. It does assume 1 cube per application, and that's okay because that's usually how we designed our reporting cubes anyway. When you migrate the LCM, what's great is it includes the database or application level substitution variables. It goes ahead and brings in the calc scripts, and then it's going to go ahead and get that data loaded over as well. So if you're migrating a cube, really that LCM approach is going to be the best. There is also an option to just create a brand new cube. So there's a wizard-driven process to kind of get the shell of the application created, and then you're off and running. So we'll see that today. So here's a few screenshots kind of when you go through the creation process. So again, with the EPM subscription, you're going to, get assigned and you'll set up a number of different instances and you'll decide, do I want to create my FCC application? Do I want to create a profitability and cost management? When you're wanting to create a freeform application, you choose planning because it's kind of underneath the planning umbrella. So you'll choose this option. And then from there, you're going to choose the option to create a new application. And then from there, kind of a wizard pops up, and I've got a recorded demo to show you guys to kind of see this in action. But from there, you can enter in the application name and description. And then underneath application type, you're going to choose the option freeform. So we're going to pick freeform. And from there, that's when you choose your creation method. So again, if you're going to want to create a BSO hybrid cube using the wizard, so brand new cube, or you want to do a brand new ASO cube, you can do that from the wizard. And or you can import in an outline file or an LCM. The 2 options for import is either from a local file, so you can just browse to it and import it in, or from the inbox. So if you have a really big cube, big outline, big data sets, then what you're likely going to want to use is EPM Automate to import in that LCM file so that it's already in the inbox, so that when it imports, it goes in. So that addresses is kind of a little bit faster way sometimes than just importing in from your local file. At that point, this is kind of where we gear, and I've got a few screenshots just to show you using the LCM process. So again, gosh, the days of EAS, which honestly, they're slowly going away. So EAS, we used to be able to navigate our outline in this very, kind of long-time user-friendly way to interact with our cubes. When you guys move into the cloud and you move your Essbase applications into the EPM Cloud, you're going to use the dimension editor. It's going to look similar, but a little bit differently. You won't be using EAS when you migrate to the cloud. Now, the other thing that's interesting, if you decide to go the other way and upgrade to 19C, you're not going to be using EAS as well. So really and truly, once you guys move to the cloud, whether you're going to Essbase 19C and you upgrade there either on OCI or on your own version, or you decide to go into the EPM Cloud, your ways of navigating managing the cube are not significantly different, but they're a little bit different. And again, no more EAS. So you review the outline to be migrated. And again, what I recommend for the most part is using LCM so you can get the full kind of cube and all of its artifacts. So you're going to go into shared services, navigate to administer, shared services console, navigate down to the Essbase cube that you want, and then you can then check the cube in the databases. So it's going to bring over the database layers, and then you can check all your items, click export, and then that's going to create an export file. So kind of your steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, you click export, and then it's there. It's going to create a zip file. So then you're just going to download that zip file. If you're an EAS and you're using the outline methodology, you're just going to save out the outline to a local file. From there, you're going to log into the cloud, and then this is where, again, in that application creation option, if you have imported in that LCM zip file into the inbox, you'll just reference that in the inbox, or you'll just browse to it. Again, I mentioned using EPM Automate to actually upload the file so that it's there. That's kind of the faster way to get some of those larger application files. From there, you just click the create option, and then the magic works and pulls in your Essbase application. So you're going to wait, it'll go through, depending on how big your cube is, how big the outline, how much data, it could take a little bit. So it just depends. I mean, I'm trying to think even for some of the big ones that we've done. I mean, it's been maybe a few minutes. So I don't know exactly, but I know at least all the ones I've tested with, I mean, it hasn't been any, it hasn't been hours and hours. It's mainly been, either really fast or maybe a few minutes that I had to wait. At that point, your application's created, and it looks just like you're just like if you've looked in PBCS or EBPCS or Planning Cloud, it's your application. However, it created a cube under the covers that doesn't have all of the restrictions on the dimensionality that we had. So again, if you look, you can navigate into overview, you can review the dimensions and see what it looks like. Whenever you pull over an existing application, if the dimension types are set, they're going to be mapped automatically for you. But it does bring over scenario inversions as custom dimensions. So if you happen to have those dimensions in your native Essbase reporting cube, and then we're using this method to pull it over. In Freeform, there's really not a scenario type or version type like we do in our normal planning applications. So if you have a native Essbase reporting cube that maybe has the kind of you're following all the standard planning applications, you might consider maybe pulling that over as planning application. It's an option so that you can kind of use some of the UIs and some of the features that are built around scenarios and versions, because those are not actually available here in the Freeform application. Now, what may happen, what likely is going to happen, you might need to fix a few different things. So there's a validation process that's going to go through just to make sure that the cube is intact. What I've found is that sometimes there's some member formulas that for whatever reason are not having an issue validating on the Essbase server, but you come in and you can address the member formula issue. In many cases, what I recommend, you could, as soon as you do the import on, let's say, that LCM zip file, and it fails, it'll go ahead and continue, and it'll like stop at the point that it's at. So then you theoretically could address and fix some issues in EPM Cloud, in the Freeform application, and then keep going. But like it didn't actually get to load the data because it failed and didn't get to refresh the database. So a lot of times it's actually easiest, and what I'd recommend is fix it in the outline file on your native Essbase cube, and then export and import the LCM file. So then that way, again, it just gets all of the data loaded in, pulls in all those artifacts, because otherwise once it hits an error, it's going to pause until you fix that error. So in most cases, easiest to kind of fix on the back-end side, and then re-export and import the LCM. So now let's take a look at what this looks like from using the wizard. So I actually, there we go. Created a demo, so we're going to kind of walk through this together. I was going to do a live demo, and then I always have technical issues, so I was like, yep, I'm going to record this just in case. And I was glad I did, because I did hit a few hiccups. So we're going to create a brand new application. I have been doing a ton of sales and operating planning, forecasting, reporting discussions. I've been having a ton of those with customers lately. So I'm creating a super simple example, kind of using a detailed, made up manufacturing customer. Here, I'm going to give the application a name, and then I'm going to choose Freeform. And in this case, I'm going to choose hybrid. So if you think you need to do any type of kind of iterative calculations, more than just straight aggregations and reporting, you can choose hybrid. At that point, I go ahead and choose hybrid, and then I can decide, do I want to enable the account dimension? Do I want to enable entity or period? And then notice that you can change the names of these. So in my case, I'm going to rename account to measure, because in my cube, I'm not going to build the GL account string, at least yet in this iteration. I'm going to call it measure, location is our entity, and there the application shell is created. So And then now I've got my application, and this is the EPM Cloud framework. The first thing I'm going to do is I really do not like the dark blue background. It drives me crazy and it makes me sad for some reason. I really like the light blue. This is more airy. So I generally do this on my applications. So now what I want to do is I've got a cube built. It's got 3 dimensions with 0 members. So what I can do at this point is I can navigate into the dimension editor and I can start to add in dimensions. So this is where, you can start to build out your dimension structure. There is a classic dimension editor available. This is kind of the new dimension editor. And then Shankar, we heard earlier, they're working on kind of even some updates based on this. So this is kind of how you do it manually. And you can see it's very easy to kind of create a few members. So here from a period perspective, we're going to add in some periods. So I can add your total, and then I can come in and we can add, the rest. It'll only let me add 10 at a time. So I can add 10 members and I can go in and kind of rename these all the way through. And then notice there's some properties that are defined here that are visible here in the dimension editor. We're going to update some of those properties in just a bit. So we can see kind of the manual interface to import in members and dimensions, super easy to do. From a measure standpoint, I can type those in. So I'm kind of setting up some base members, but what I really am going to do, it would be way easier for me to actually import in the members if I have a list of it, so I can set up a file. So here I can import in. The first time I imported in, I had an error, so you've got very good error tracking capabilities. So here, successful import on my measures dimension, and then if we navigate down, we can see the statistics that were, the accounts that were input in. So we've got kind of some revenue and cost and gross profit accounts, and then we have some key statistics. And again, there's different consolidation properties that you often tag with your Essbase cubes. So we can set COGS to be subtraction so that it'll calculate our gross profit correctly. We can go through, and again, literally I'm showing you all of my clicks from start to finish. I tried to zoom up some of this. I'm not actually, I can't click or type quite this fast. So I tried to zoom it up in the interest of time, but just so you could see kind of all of the different clicks of setting up all the different dimensions. So here setting up, and now we're starting to add in some new dimensions. So we created a product dimension. Again, we can kind of add in the different members. We can click save. And then again, once we've kind of got the base dimension, we could import in. Notice here, kind of in MS and OP data, we've got product, and I'm keeping my dimensions pretty simple in this example. But you could have things like customer, you could have things like machines, et cetera. Here we've got a cost center. We're going to add this in. Oftentimes I've seen with our manufacturing customers, they've got our cost centers broken out across their manufacturing processes. So they're really wanting to look at some detailed costs across their product families. So we can build in those different elements of the dimension. In general, you guys see me consistently building kind of a total cost center, a no cost center, and then all cost centers. That really comes from the eBPCS kind of design, which I like. So it gives you the ability to kind of pick a subtotal with the no member, or if you don't want to include the no member, you have the ability to do that. Now, another thing I want to make sure everybody's aware of and has seen and used, that if you want to manage dimensions in Excel, you can definitely do that. So we can, this is way faster than the web interface to set in properties. So I'm essentially ad hocing my dimensionality, and I'm setting properties. So I can update these and I can submit data. I can insert in new members. So here, if we want to insert in a new machine hours, I can copy and paste properties. So again, you can see from an Essbase cube standpoint and freeform, kind of the initial time that you're going to have. Now, again, if you already have an existing cube, you've migrated all of this over. But if you're creating a new one from scratch, it's kind of just setting up what's the data that we want to analyze, what's the data that we want to load in. Another thing that you can do, again, we could insert in new members, we can insert in member formulas, right? So, so kind of fixing some of my typing. So we're going to make weight per unit dynamic calc. Again, we can set copy and paste some of the properties over, but then I can give it a formula. And so the formulas, for the most part, pretty simple within our Essbase in the cloud. It's our same CalcScript syntax. If we're using ASO cubes, it's your MDX syntax. But here we can set the member formula, get that saved in. We can refresh the database. So big takeaway here, again, as we continue to set up, and again, I was building this cube from scratch. You can do this in the web. You can also have folks, if they like to work in Excel, if they've been provisioned with security, they have the ability to do that. So just adding in the last of the dimensions, we've got scenario and year kind of as the last items that we wanted to add in. So notice that in this cube, I don't build a version dimension. I did decide in this cube, for whatever reason, to keep period and years separate. One of the things that I would advise you guys to consider in some of the reporting cubes is potentially combining year and period, because that gives you some really great visualizations when you start using Dashboards 2.0 and you start using kind of the OAC interface. So that's something that's great with these freeform cubes. Sometimes we get on autopilot and we automatically split year and period, but from a reporting and analysis and kind of the data visualization capabilities, combining those together provides some pretty cool visualizations. So here I've just created really simple cube, and I think I have all of my data set, final refresh. I think those were all my dimensions. So then I'm ready to import data, right? And so here I'm using the simplified UI. So I have a basic file set up, and then I can import in my data. In real life, you're probably going to use data management to kind of set up your repeatable data management processes. That loaded in our data. Again, we've got a hybrid cube. So I'm going to create a business rule to do an aggregation. So in hybrid, well, and before I jump to this, so within the aggregation role here, I'm using the template because sometimes, again, I do as well. Like I love writing calc scripts, and it's pretty Excel easy to write the formulas, but know that there is a wizard driven process where I can be like, what dimensions do you want to aggregate? Well, I need to aggregate product and location in my hybrid cube. The other dimensions are dynamic, and the wizard wrote the script for me. So it prompted me on some tuning settings that I might want to set. So I can create the rule and then I can deploy it. So from the user interface, I then just ran the rule. That was really fast. And now I'm ad hocing data. So I'm in Smart View, and this is the power of Essbase, right? So I can kind of, if I know member names very quickly, I can just type them into my spreadsheet, click retrieve, and I'm connected to the database, and I can slice and dice. And really use all of the exciting features of Essbase. So drilling in, zooming in, keeping only, slicing and dicing and pivoting. So powerful interface, just doing the ad hoc capabilities. So that's kind of what we had in our native Essbase cubes. What's great now in our Essbase cubes in the cloud is I can also create forms, I can create dashboards. So here I'm going to create kind of a basic form that's like an actual versus variance type form. For the native Essbase folks, the folks who have not used this, the forms are great because it provides templates, it provides starting points for users to be able to find specific data sets. And then if you give them access, they have the ability to ad hoc from there. So they're very similar. I think we call them smart slices, but this is like a way better format of that. And again, we can do traffic lighting, we can do validation rules in here. All of the data form functionality is supported here. And essentially with a form, all you're doing is saying, what do you want in your rows? What do you want in your columns? And you can have a point of view with a drop down. So you can select, so here I'm saying I want to see level 0 locations, level 0 products, actual variance, and this one's focused on volumes. I can set some suppression information, so I can suppress missing data. If we've defined valid intersections of like what are valid products and locations, we can suppress those valid intersections to enforce data integrity. We can assign business rules to run on save so that if users are submitting in data, they click save and they want to update data, we can do that. So it's set up this template, and again, you know, kind of the whole form, we could spend a lot of time on the really cool features, variables to make the templates very dynamic, and so forth. So now we're going to create a dashboard. So I'm actually kind of pulling in that same dashboard. And what I want to do is kind of create an editable dashboard. So I've got my chart on one side, and I've got my grid on the other side. So you can see it's kind of a click and drag interface, and I can save this. Probably want to give it a little bit better name. So if we want to call this our quantity or our volumes data form, I can click save, and then I can just click play to jump right into it. And this is what users would see. And so again, we would set up security. I don't actually have this set up, but as users then update data, again, you get kind of the power of the EPM framework, so they can kind of key in data, and you've got these charts and visualizations that update as data changes. So I think that was my 10-minute, like, build an Essbase cube in 10 minutes. It took me, it was probably double time. In some of these cases, I sped up some of my clicks double time. So, you know, it really, I think, was about 30 minutes this morning, kind of creating this example for you guys, but just to show you how easy it is. And again, hopefully you saw that really no IT required. If you're a business user, you're going to be able to get these applications up and running very quickly. Okay, so once you've created the cube, right? So if we kind of take a step back and you got a glimpse into the post-creation activities. You know, so we either migrated our LCM over, or we created a new application. You want to confirm, I think for the most part, the dimension outline order comes over and it's the same. There was some kind of early on testing where we saw a few nuances, but just make sure you're going to want to validate the data. Now, another thing that is important, if you've got your BSO cube and you're pulling it over, it's going to be enabled and hybrid in this new world. So you want to tune and test for hybrid mode and any dynamic calculations that you've got built within the application. You will have to rebuild your data integrations. So in your native Essbase cubes, you've got probably a whole bunch of different data load rules, maybe some dimension build rules. You're going to have to recreate those processes in the planning cloud using data management. Now, pretty much everything that you do in a load rule, you're going to be able to do in data management. So it's just, you've done the hard part of the design of how that should work. Now it's just redoing it in the data management or data integration. There's kind of a new UI to get to data management through that interface. You're going to need to re-provision and build security. So kind of under the covers, planning is using security filters or Essbase filters, just like you did in a native Essbase, but kind of how you assign that security is a little bit different. So you'll need to reset up security. If you've got any FR reports, you can migrate those over into FR. However, you're in the enterprise EPM subscription if you're using Freeform. So my recommendation is you don't migrate them over to FR, you actually migrate them into narrative reporting and the management reporting interface. So that way you can take advantage of all of the really new, cool, exciting items. And there is a migration utility that will help you get from FR into narrative reporting, into management reporting. You know, there's still a few steps and things, but narrative reporting has really closed the gap, and a lot of the stuff we did in FR, they can now do, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. So you definitely want to go with the forward technology, the really new exciting technology. So narrative reporting is the place to be. You will need to rewrite your automation scripts. You're going to be taking your MaxL logic and kind of converting that over into EPM Automate scripts, and or the EPM Cloud framework also has a jobs interface. So there may be some elements of the automation that you can just do with scheduled jobs and created jobs and not even have to do any of the MaxL scripting. You're going to migrate all of this information. You're going to do all of your testing validation in a test instance, and then you're going to migrate it to prod. Work with your users to update your SmartView connections to connect into the new application. And then you're going to want to set up your automation scripts. What's great, Oracle will back up your application every night. However, you probably want to set up a process that then downloads that backup so that you can keep, you know, 7 days, 10 days of your application. So these are kind of your post application creation steps or migration steps. And again, you saw the glimpse, you get all the really awesome benefits of the EPM Cloud. So that's why I'm really excited to see how Glenn and Edward kind of duke it out on 19C versus freeform applications, because 19C doesn't have native built-in dashboards or data forms to kind of create some standard layouts for users to just make interacting with the data easier. Navigation flows and cards and clusters, task lists. I love Calculation Manager and way better than the EAS Calc Script Editor. So there are design time templates that help you write some really creative logic. You can have reusable components in scripts. So it is it's an awesome tool to help just with the overall logic and calculations that you're going to be doing. Reporting, narrative reporting, and then common administration. So, so again, dashboarding, you guys kind of saw that in action, using forms in SmartView, and then you can ad hoc. The one thing to kind of keep in mind, it is 1 cube per instance. So underneath the covers, whenever you are subscribing to the EPM Cloud subscription, you're going to have, a planning instance. You'll have an FCC instance. Each one of these Essbase cubes will be their own instance. At least that's how it is right now. So again, in the future, they may allow us to have multiple cubes in a single pod or single instance. But right now, the way it works is if you had, let's say an AP vendor cube, where you wanted to do a detailed analysis, kind of on your POs and remaining spend and those types of things, that would be its own cube, its own instance. Now, that just is kind of as an FYI, from a user perspective, they don't really have to care so much because there's ways in setting up smart view connections to make it super easy for them in Excel. With cards and clusters, they don't necessarily need to care where all of these cubes reside. It's more from an administration standpoint that you just are going to just know kind of how it's set up, at least underneath the cube and underneath the covers. And then let's just make a quick note about hybrid. And honestly, this note still applies for 19C as well, because like hybrid is the default behavior in Essbase 19C. So your freeform cubes are going to be hybrid enabled. So under the covers, that's a good thing, right? So you're using the new technology. We have seen some very huge, big benefits to using hybrid cubes. So definitely, you're going to want to use this. This is a good thing. What it does is it leverages kind of BSO functionality, BSO outline calculation engine, but where it can, it's going to use the ASO query engine for kind of really fast aggregations of those sparse dimensions. So there is a whole, and I think Glenn Schwartzberg he has a whole session during the Solutions Conference on tuning for hybrid. So I recommend you guys check that out. Oracle's written a really great, very detailed design guide to help with design and tuning for hybrid, because you want to do that. Again, it's great because it reduces your cube size, it improves cube refresh performance, reduces time for data exports and imports, reduces the maintenance time window. I mean, across the board, there's a ton of benefits to it. However, you want to tune and test. Occasionally, there's a certain order to, as you guys know with Essbase, if you're an Essbase person, there's kind of an order of operations when it comes to Essbase calculations. So once you've enabled your cube for hybrid, you need to validate kind of your dynamic calculations or any of your reports that are pulling dynamically calculated members with potentially some asymmetric queries, just to ensure that the results are calculating as expected. There may be a little bit of tuning, tweaking that you need to do so that things are calculating in the proper order. So whenever you are migrating from native Essbase into Essbase in the cloud, save some time for this. To go through. And again, for the most part, all your data should load in and validate and tie out that's stored. We just want to make sure kind of the order of operations are as you expected with those dynamic calculations. So from a lessons learned, kind of what we've seen so far, BSO hybrid, we talked about this, testing and validating your calculations. The other important lesson learned is, I know a lot of you guys I just want to get to the cloud, and how do we get there just as fast as possible? And I just want to like lift and shift. Let me just move my Essbase cubes directly into freeform applications and then just move and be over. This is a really good opportunity for you to review the application design, the cube design for best practices. We've, under the covers, the technology's changed, super scalable and fast. So like, if you don't do anything, honestly, when you move to the cloud, it should get faster just because under the covers, you've got some newer versions of Essbase that are running that should perform and will perform likely better than your on-premise. However, and again, I've seen this where I've looked at some cubes and, there are some, small tweaks that can be made that can make dramatic improvements either from a user experience or from an overall performance perspective. It also may be time just to reevaluate and say, is this really supporting the questions that folks need to answer? So sometimes you can add a little bit of time incrementally into the project to kind of review, redesign, and then pull it over. So, definitely take advantage of this time to do that. And that lesson learned really holds true with all of your applications that you're migrating into the cloud. You don't want to just migrate over and then not do anything. It would be a real shame for you to just migrate your Essbase cube and then all you used was SmartView. So you've got this awesome dashboarding capability that's built in. There's a Dashboards 2.0 that's very Oracle Analytics kind of data visualization like experience. So creating visualizations, helping users, guiding users to find issues, trends with the data. Also, there's one other feature I want to make sure you take advantage of. Oh, the narrative reporting is the other part. So I met with a lot of you guys, and there are some diehard Excel SmartView people that they're really good at SmartView. They love Excel, and so they have all of kind of their reports and everything developed. They've got their process where they're refreshing data and creating. And so, I get it, and I know you love it, and I agree it's awesome, but it can be even better because you can automate a lot of those activities with narrative reporting. Okay, so again, Freeform is not just if you've got access to Freeform, you have access to narrative reporting. So part of your effort and process should not just be moving over your Essbase cube. It should be then, all right, what reports can we automate with the narrative reporting process and migrate reporting? And let's remove those manual steps. So again, you can take it a step further. There are some rebuild efforts that are required. So your data integrations, you're going to need to recreate no Essbase load rules. Automations are in a different command line language. However, it's really simple, and you're going to be able to take your Maxell and kind of convert it over pretty easily. And then you'll need to redo your security, which again, it's a pretty straightforward process. And again, overall, very simple to use. If you understand kind of the foundation of Essbase, if you've been working with Essbase, very minimal learning curve. You kind of just need to learn the UIs and the navigation and the EPM Cloud, which is not difficult at all. If you are new to Essbase, again, Essbase reporting cubes and being able to slice and dice, you can kind of talk to other folks on this call. I wish we were all in the same room so you could network together, but it's a really powerful solution. And again, it definitely thinks more business friendly than it does IT when you're talking about creating these cubes and these reports. So with that, wanted to leave a little bit of time for question and answers. So I'm going to go to the question and answer section. Have you encountered any sizing limitations with the entity tag dimensions? If not, 50,000 members is the limit. Untag it as entity and it'll load as a custom dimension. So thank you for that tip. I have not hit that limit yet with the entity dimension. With the cubes that we've worked with, but that's a really helpful tip. So I know we have built in, I think we've got one cube that's got 1 million-ish members, I believe. So really big is supported, but again, that was a custom dimension. Is the old dimension editor available for Freeform? Yes, it is. So I was trying to, go with the new, kind of the newer way, the new dimension editor for my recorded demo. However, in real life, I usually entirely use the old dimension editor. I love it. How do you integrate multiple Freeform cubes and applications? So right now, with the available functionality that we have, you're going to use data management to kind of share data between Freeform cubes, because you can set up kind of cube-to-cube integrations very easily. And then again, what we've done right now is you can kind of wrap around Groovy and make those user-driven interactions. So and you can be very succinct in kind of how you're pushing and pulling data. Eventually, hopefully, I'm ready for data maps. If you guys have used the data maps feature, it's really kind of simple UI to do cube-to-cube integration, and so that we can't use that yet for Freeform because right now that can only be used within a single pod or single instance. But soon, is what I keep hearing, we're going to have cross-pod data maps. Do we have an option to support dynamically changing attributes in a Freeform ASO cube? So I think we're talking about varying attributes, and no, that is not supported in ASO. Really not too many people ended up using that feature. in Essbase, although it was really cool and I liked it. And actually I'm joining Henry Robin in a kind of remembering back, and we're talking about that specific feature on one of the slides. So that's not supported, but what you do kind of to meet that requirement is using smart lists. So we can build smart lists in these freeform applications, and then those smart lists can track, attribute type data, text type data. So let's say it's employee status. That's a really, really common one. Employee status, that can change over time, where I'm working and then Corona hits and I'm furloughed for 3 months, and then I'm back, hopefully active employee. So that can be tracked, managed, and reported on in a smart list. So if you have varying attributes in your ASO, again, those are not going to migrate over, but what you can do is create smart lists to kind of track and report the same information. Can we create multiple applications of different types? So again, it's 1 cube per application in an instance, but you would just have like, here's my hybrid SNOP cube. And then maybe over here, I've got my AP vendor cube to kind of do some detailed analysis, and that's an ASO cube. So you absolutely can mix and match your different cubes, but they're each going to be on their own instance or pod right now, the way the instance is set up. But you're not constrained and limited in the number of applications or pods or instances that you can have. Do we have options like EAS to update security filters? Yes. So again, it works a little bit differently in freeform, but essentially if you want to give write access to, let's say I'm the manager of the West region, I'm going to have write access to descendants of West. If Edward is the manager of East, he's going to have read access to descendants of East. So again, kind of the same design process that you did for your security filters in Essbase is really the same process that you're going to do in freeform. Now, one note is that right now there's cell level security is not supported. However, I think it is coming very soon. So if you do have a requirement for cell level security, right now it can't be supported, but that's going to be coming very soon. Are data maps available in freeform? So data maps, not yet, because again, data maps allow you to move data from one cube to another. And right now in freeform, it's only 1 cube. So there's 1 cube in the instance. So even if there were data maps, you wouldn't really, you wouldn't really need that, because you wouldn't really need that. But again, once cross-pod data maps are supported, I hope it will be available to us. Does shared services exist in the cloud? It does. It does. It looks, it's not called shared services. It's basically under this migration, but it's, and again, the security component looks a little bit different, but essentially there is a shared services in the cloud. It is not called shared services, but all the same kind of export, import functionality that we did with shared services, that's available in the cloud, and it's way easier to kind of understand and work with. All right, I think we hit all of the open questions. Let's check the chat section. Oh, thank you. Glenn and Edward's presentation is tomorrow in the Essbase track. Okay, so that's going to be a great session to kind of take the information you had. Ideally, we tried to schedule them to do their presentation first, and then I was going to do this one. We had some folks that needed to change sessions, so we moved this guy up. This is going to be a good session. Sorry, I was like trying to read a chat and then talk with you guys. This is going to be a good session to really kind of weigh Essbase 19c versus freeform. So if you guys have native Essbase cubes right now that you're supporting in on-prem, it is super important. It's so great that you attended this session. It's going to be important that you attend that session so you understand kind of what are your future options as far as upgrading to on-prem. I believe they will talk about that, as well as kind of the 19c version and then freeform Essbase. Any other questions? So Glenn and Edward are presenting tomorrow at 2 p.m. and I think it's Essbase 19c versus freeform applications. It's called something similar to that. And then I helped with some of the content sharing, and then I shared a really fun idea for the format, which I don't know if they kept, but I'm hoping that they did. So it should actually hopefully add in some fun along the way in that session. All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, then I will conclude. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. And I hope everybody has a great rest of the day.